It's my absolute pleasure to welcome today Jackie Weaver as our special guest for Scrutiny Week. Jackie is best known for the viral video in which she appeared as a facilitator for the meeting for Handforth Parish Council. Since then, she's gone on to produce chart-topping podcasts with celebrity guests. Multiple memes and GIFs have been made in her honour. She's appeared in our promo video for the TPAS networking site TPAS Connect, and she had the little low-key gig of opening the Brits. Jackie has just published this book, You Do Have the Authority Here, in which she takes you through her sound advice of being heard and getting things done in the local community. This is exactly the kind of thing that Scrutiny volunteers and staff around the country are doing. So we've invited Jackie to be our very own Scrutiny Week Agony Aunt. I've got the questions, let's hear some advice from Jackie. Jackie Weaver, we are so thrilled to have you here on the TPAS YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being our Agony Aunt for Scrutiny Week.
My absolute pleasure.
So I've just done my little intro where I've discussed you and your new book, but can you, in your own words, talk about yourself and how you got things done in the community?
Yeah, I mean, I think that community work is hugely important. I think it's really what oils the wheels of society. And I know those sound like, kind of like fancy phrases that you hear on the telly, but I really do believe them. But I like to be one of those people that's kind of in the background. I know that seems really hard to believe over the last 6 months. But, you did have, 62 years before then when you didn't see me at all. And I like to be someone who, when you're trying to achieve something, when you've got a vision for your community or your place of interest, and you come across a stumbling block, I like to be the person that helps you get past that, to help you achieve your ambitions. Because you're the one that knows your community. I don't.
That's brilliant. And it's brilliant to hear that 62 years of being around without being on our screens.
But I'm making up for it now.
Making up for it now, exactly, Jackie. Wonderful. Right, let's get straight to it then, Jackie.
Ready?
Question 1. Dear Jackie, I volunteered my time for my landlord for 12 years. In the last 3 years, I've been a Scrutiny panel member. I feel like I give so much. I'm never thanked. How can I make my landlord value me and my time?
Okay. We are incredibly bad at communicating with each other as people. And, even when we're talking about an organisations, they are made up of people. And we kind of assume that they know how we feel about things. So I wonder if there's an opportunity for you to feed in some way. Maybe there's let's be flippant, a suggestion box, or somewhere where you can, approach them through the website, that kind of thing, where you can say, do you realise how much time volunteers put in? And do you have a way of recognising their input? And it may be that actually that is exactly what they were hoping for, because it had never occurred to them that actually somebody would feel that they needed recognition. Maybe they are in turn intimidated by your scrutiny role and would feel uncomfortable about approaching you to say, well done. So communication, it's probably the key to most things.
Sound advice. Particularly, I like the idea of the time banking. The actual writing down time, because it just can get carried away, can't it? And the other partner, the staff member might just not realise how much time it actually takes. So it's brilliant sound advice there. Thank you so much, Jackie. Right, here we go. When I look around the table, I see the same faces saying the same thing. We're a talking shop. Can I shake things up, or is it time to give up?
I can't tell you how many times I've been sat at that table. I think that, and I don't mean to devalue what you're saying, but I think many of us will have had the experience where we think, what the heck am I doing here? I'm really not making a difference. And although this isn't necessarily going to be that helpful, I still think it's an important point. I don't know if you will make a difference when you're there, but I sure as heck know you will not make a difference if you're not there. And I think sometimes we do get frustrated, and sometimes it's about pushing through that, and looking at whether or not there are other ways of feeding in your ideas. Expressing them in a different way, or feeding them in a different way. So I know it's not perhaps the answer you wanted, but stick with it, because you ain't going to change it from the outside.
Stick with it then, says Jackie. Okay, marvellous. Dear Jackie, how can we get more young people interested in scrutiny? I wish I had £1 for every time I hear that from some cast members. How can we improve diversity, and in particular young people, in volunteering?
Okay, can I just ask, what do you mean by a young person?
Oh, very good point. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, anything under 50 looks pretty young to me.
Yeah, I guess officially in housing, I think quite often it kind of refers to young people being under 25.
Yeah, you see, I would have been immediately thinking of 16 to 18.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking at kind of definitely young adults, most definitely. Okay, and how do we attract them? Okay, one of the things I've been shocked and surprised by over the last 6 months is the amount of interest shown in what I've got to talk about when I'm talking about inclusion and diversity and getting involved by young people. I was absolutely stunned, and I remember feeling incredibly shamed by my first meeting when I was kind of knocked for six by the quality of the questions that I was being asked. Some reporters could really benefit from talking to, your 18 to 25-year-olds, because they had better questions than a lot of reporters I've listened to. And I suppose for me, we tackle it by saying, what can we do with ourselves to be more attractive to that kind of other person, so that they're going to want to come and join my party? And I kind of turn it round and prefer to go to them and say, what do you want? So what is there that a young person, 25-year-old, might want that I can give? And I think by looking at it that way, you probably change yourself in order to attract them. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I sound a bit circuitous, but it's kind of almost putting out a challenge to them rather than saying, please come and join us. It's, what do you want? And when they tell you what they want, say, come and make it happen.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant advice. I mean, it's that old, don't expect them to come into the room, go out to where those people are, isn't it?
And I think that's another huge point, certainly something I've learned over the last 6 months, is that there is no point in kind of thinking of that old model that we had of, certainly from parish councils. No, you're not parish councils, but, Drafty Village Hall, Monday night, they often meet Monday nights, and just assuming that somehow people amorphously know that you're going to be there and we'll be talking about something hugely exciting and want to turn up. It doesn't happen. No. So if you want to attract younger people, where are you going to find them? Now, depending on the age group, that could be on the park bench or it could be in the pub. But that's the place you go to find them. You don't expect them to come and find you in your Drafty Village Hall. And social media definitely has its place. I know that we say awful things about social media these days, and some of the stuff on social media is awful. But at the same time, it can be an enormous tool for good.
Oh no, that's wonderful. That's great to hear as well. To look out, outside of the usual channels, and particularly the Drafty Hall, because that doesn't attract anyone really, does it? Okay, dear Jackie, in my organisation, it's those with the loudest voice who get heard. It stinks. Any advice?
Okay, you probably guessed I like to challenge perceptions. Okay, so sometimes when we say a phrase like it's those with the loudest voices that get heard, and we continue to say it over and over again, then we believe it, we don't challenge it anymore. Is it really those with the loudest voices that are heard? or is it people who do actually step up and speak? Because sometimes it can be quite difficult, particularly if you're in an active organisation, to have your voice heard. And what I do kind of push in my book, okay, I've only mentioned it once, is that actually there are other ways of being heard. It doesn't have to be by standing up in a meeting, and particularly if that's something that makes you really uncomfortable. You can feed your views in through perhaps one of those people that has a loud voice, or you can talk to the organisers before or after. You can email. There's all sorts of other ways of having your voice heard other than pushing yourself, if you're not comfortable doing it, to standing in that meeting talking.
Yes, and you genuinely do talk about that in your book.
Yes.
And it's good to recognise that it's not just about someone speaking and standing up in a meeting, is it? There's all sorts of different ways of having that.
I don't remember, to be honest. I mean, because the book's full of things I usually say, so I don't remember if they're all in the book or not. But one of the things that I always think of is that phrase, some questions need to be asked, but some just need to ask questions. And it is that sense of, some people think that the point of being at a meeting is that they've got to say something, and that can end up with the same people saying the same things as per the other questioner. So if you can't break through that, then look at going round it.
Right, on that note then, wonderful end to that question. Dear Jackie, when your home is affected and it's not your fault, like floods or mould, how can you ensure the right company takes accountability? It's a really, really interesting one, particularly in housing, because there's been so much, there's really awful stories going on in the media in social housing. But beyond there, really, I mean, energy companies are now going bust, aren't they? Flooding is a big risk. I guess it's just a kind of general question, really. I
guess it's so easy to say when it's not you that's affected. I totally get that. So I kind of feel awkward about, giving advice to somebody who's in that position, who I've never been in that position. But I do wonder again, if we get emotional about these things. I know we do get emotional about them, but if you're going to try to make a difference, if you're going to take action, then if you can deal with the emotion somewhere, go cry your eyes out, go shout at your dog. Just wherever you normally release your tension, get some of it out. And then when you are dealing with people, because the person that is going to be able to help you, even though they're on the other side of the table, as it were, is still a person. And if you are shouting and screaming because you're hurt and your home is destroyed, they won't hear you. All they'll hear is the anger, and they won't know. We're people, they won't know how to deal with it. So try and offload some of that, and then try and find a friend in your housing association or wherever you go to for your support to help you navigate. Because with all of these things, the important thing is to talk to the right person. So somebody will be there to help you find the right person. And if there isn't, or if you can't find them, then go to somebody you trust. Go to maybe your parish councillor, maybe your ward councillor. And if it's a really big issue, your MP, and they will help navigate.
Yeah, no, you make really good points there, Jackie. Quite often there's a very long-winded bureaucratic process for registering complaints, and you can get really bogged down with that. So it's sound advice to try and find an individual, or writing to the MP is brilliant advice. And other organisations like Citizens Advice Bureau, and those kind of organisations.
Also true.
Wonderful. Dear Jackie, I joined the scrutiny panel thinking I was part of a team, but I suspect it was a tick box exercise. My position, role, voice is not being heard. What should I do?
You might be a tick box. I don't know. I guess the only way that you can find that out is by testing it. Mm-hmm. So, there will be an organiser for the scrutiny group. And I can guarantee that if it's a scrutiny organisation, a scrutiny group, they will keep records. So ask them formally, what is my role here? And show me any change that has been affected over the last 12 months, 5 years, by a complaint or being drawn to the attention of the organisation by the scrutiny committee. Test it.
Give it a go. This is one of my own little sideball going on here. You're clearly very, very PR savvy, Jackie. Have you got clearly very PR savvy? You've turned a moment into a career, and it's wonderful. And here's the book. How would you advise people that are kind of working tirelessly, day in, day out, making differences in the local community? How can you advise them on, a bit of your PR magic, Jackie, in raising the profile of all the work that they've done?
It's a really good question. Now, people normally say that when they think I haven't got a clue what the answer is. And if I say that, it'll give me time to think about it. But I genuinely think that is a really good question. The reason why is that I spent the best part of 25 years of my life, I have the grey hair to prove it, trying to get more media attention, well, not so much media attention, but through the media, more people interested, more people aware of what their local councils do. And even now, I know that as you're listening to the answer here, what you're thinking of is when I say local council, you're thinking about the people who repair the roads and the people who do planning, etc. That's not your local council. That's your borough council or your county council or your principal authority. I'm talking about your town or parish council. And I've had absolutely no success whatsoever. Because it's not sexy. I mean, it's just that, these are people, volunteers, who work in their communities, and the only people who will ever recognise what they do is their own community at best. And in some instances, even their own community are not really aware of the difference between the ones who look after schools and roads and the parish and town councils. So how do you get your organisation noticed? I think that if I wanted to promote a cause or an organisation that I was involved in, I think what I would do is try and find a person who already had some presence. I think that if you're trying to create a presence from scratch, you've got an awful lot of work to do. And you probably won't succeed, because my sense is that the media is looking for a quick fix. They're not looking for a story that could take 25 years to tell. So find someone, the footballers are kind of like the classic example of that, where a small story is suddenly escalated because a footballer has got involved in it. So if you can find somebody local who has some presence, that would be your starter for 10. But as for any other advice from me, I have absolutely no idea whatsoever. And it still remains a mystery to me why people want to listen to what I've got to say. But I'm glad they do.
Well, you're becoming that person now, Jackie. I mean, you're here, aren't you? And you're our person.
Well, yes.
So that's really good advice, and thank you for sharing that.
And just on that point, though, Ray, I'm here because you asked me to be.
Yeah, you've got to put yourself out there, haven't you?
Yeah. So you approached me, you asked me, you sold it. You need to ask for something like that. It isn't going to drop. You're not suddenly going to say, "Oh, I must pop round and find out what's happening there."
Yeah, and it does take, it didn't take a huge amount of Googling to get hold of your details, Jackie, but I guess with some people, it would take quite a fair bit of determination, possibly finding out where the celebrity has a drink.
Yes,
or something,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can take the
It's
point.
often surprising that you're not that far. It's like that old phrase of, is it 6 degrees of separation? You know, you're not that far away from your next celebrity, I suspect.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point. Okay, so here's the next question. Dear Jackie, I think we might be nearing the end now. I volunteered in housing for 6 years, but I still don't understand the jargon. We've got lots of this, lots of jargon in housing, Jackie. Do you share my pain? Now, I should imagine this person probably knew, maybe working in parish council world, that you do share that pain. What are your thoughts?
I just say shame on them. I hope, if you haven't done it already, I would seriously think of putting in the chat or standing up in the meeting if you feel able to do it, or something to say, I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. And if you could only do that, I bet you will find other people in the room that will go, oh, thank God for that, because I haven't got a clue what we're talking about either. I mean, everybody does it. I do it. I slip into it without realising I'm doing it. So it may be that if you actually draw attention to it, the organiser is going to go, I never thought of it. Yes, of course we will. And if that doesn't work, ask for a crib sheet.
A jargon buster. Or
well,
something.
you know, yeah, absolutely. You know, a glossary. Because, you know, if they really, and sometimes there is a reason for doing it. I mean, for example, I work for Chalk. Now, that was easy to say, but actually I work for the Cheshire Association of Local Councils. Now, if every time we're going to mention it, they have to be the Cheshire Association of Local Councils, which was shortened because we used to be the County Palatine of Chester Association of Town and Parish Councils. So we did get quite snazzy after that. But you use these acronyms because, you know, the conversation would take forever if you were using, you know, so I get why we do it. But at the very least, you should have a glossary. But I think there are times when we fall into it and it's lazy.
No, it's a good point. You know, our honest storytelling language, you know, will help people kind of follow what you're saying much more, won't it? But it does serve a purpose sometimes.
It's actually, and there is an assumption, of course, that everybody else knows what they're talking about. But I was actually in a meeting a couple of nights ago for the day job, and there was a presentation by Health, with the local authority. They were looking at making some changes, and I can honestly say I have absolutely no idea what they were talking about.
even after all that time, all the experience,
absolutely,
in so many times, still don't have a clue.
Absolutely, I could not follow, even with the slides. And actually, there should have been a law against having that many words on a slide. Even with the slides, I couldn't. It was such a big concept, so many words. I couldn't keep it all in my head.
Well, there you go. You see, don't beat yourself up.
No,
if you don't understand the jargon, because even Jackie Weaver sometimes doesn't get it. I think we're out of questions, Jackie. But thank
yay!
you
So
much.
that is official. The world is now fixed.
Done. Done. Scrutiny
Oh,
week.
lovely.
Brilliant. Thank you so much again, Jackie.
It's been a pleasure, but I do think that time and time again, our issues come down to communication.
Oh, absolutely.
And I know it's so well worn as a phrase, but that doesn't mean that it's not true. And actually, there is a point where no matter who you are and no matter who you're speaking to pause and say, actually, what you say is making me feel this way. And I think that, you know, all of us get a shake when that happens. It happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I was talking to somebody that I was going to be interviewing, kind of or like doing your job, Ray, you know, talking, getting questions from somebody else. And this lady said to me, I'm really worried about this. And I thought, it hadn't occurred to me. Yeah. So communication. As soon as she told me about it, I was able to adjust what we were doing, everything was fine. But it never occurred to me that she felt uncomfortable.
And you wouldn't have picked up on it, had she not said anything. No.
She didn't look it. I mean, she wasn't doing the classic, now biting or whatever. She looked absolutely calm and happy with this is what we're planning to do later. It wasn't in the middle of it. So yeah, as soon as she said it, we were able to change the plan a little till, we all felt comfortable with it. But if she hadn't spoken up, I would not have known. And I like to think I'm kind of fairly switched on to these things, but I just wasn't clocking it. So yeah, communication.
Oh, that's great. And we've been through seven questions, and 8 with my little one on top, and I totally agree. A lot of it is about communication, so that's a really nice way of summing up the Ask Jackie session. Thank you again.
A pleasure. Next one, all about relationships. Much better.